Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. We come to you from our state-of-the-art Pontchartrain production studios. Isn't this lavish, right? I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams. Saints, LSU, Tulane. Maybe we'll sneak a little Pelicans in there, but we'll definitely talk a little high school sports to break it down for us. Two of the best that have ever been on this show. Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com and 106.1Nash.com. He'll tell you about that in a moment. My colleague over at Sports 1280, David Grubb from Hard in the Paint, and also CrescentCitySports.com. Gentlemen, welcome to the show tonight. And I said it last week. I feel like George Jefferson. I feel like I moved all the way to the top. Heck of a studio, huh?
Fantastic.
Oh, yeah. You've upgraded, my friend.
Oh, this is really nice, really nice. And again, thanks to the folks at WLAE-TV, everything they put into this. It's been a few years in the making, and we finally made it back here. Jude, a lot going on in your life, okay, with CrescentCitySports.com, but the radio portion of what you guys do at CrescentCitySports.com has made a move now. Talk a little bit about CrescentCitySports.com and the brand new radio station you guys are involved in.
It really is a time for new digs, especially with this trio and that great new radio show for David that you mentioned. And we're excited to be with Cumulus and Nash Icon 106.1. It's a fantastic setup with Pat Galloway and company at Cumulus, and at the 7 o'clock hour weeknights we have Sports Talk, Ken Trahan and I, all access, and our big programs that folks around the area have gotten used to following for years, including one we're very proud of, Ken Trahan's original Louisiana Prep Football Report, 25 years now, and Ed Daniels joins Ken from 10 a.m. to noon. Every Saturday morning, the Tailgate is the longest-running sports show in New Orleans on the radio. So excited to bring all those properties of CrescentCitySports.com to a new entity. And speaking of CCS, this is our time of year. We're streaming more games than ever. We've got a great relationship with Cox Sports Television to start things off last week. Tonight, Thursday, for this recording, is our first game producing for the LHSAA Game of the Week. It's back after a few years hiatus. They're streaming it, and it will be hosted at CrescentCitySports.com as Welsh takes on Iota, and we have some big-time matchups coming up on Thursday night, the rest of the season, as well as our Friday and Saturday offerings this week. How about seeing Arch Manning? Folks haven't seen him yet. We have him going to Yenny to take on Bonneville on Friday night, so you can get a look at the phenom, the latest in the Newman quarterback family. So a lot going on at Crescent City Sports, and we're really thrilled about our new relationship on 106.1. Pardon
me, and you guys have a setup show on Friday nights at Bienvenue. Of course, everybody's mentor, Ro Brown, the legendary Ro Brown, involved in that, along with award-winning journalist Les East. Is he also
That's correct. They're hosting for the third year together, although Ro's been involved for much longer. The Countdown Show at Bienvenue, as you mentioned, our great friend Scott Craig is involved with that. Chef Scott, we love you. And it's been a great host location. Our second year, we have theme nights with local high schools, so every week we have a big crowd, sometimes players, cheerleaders, the band even shows up. So that's really exciting if you want to get a feel for high school football without actually going to a game and get a great meal.
Yeah, no doubt. David, welcome back to the show. And I got to say it again. Once again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Got rave reviews on the radio show, doing a fantastic job. And he's everywhere because he's doing Facebook Live. He's on Twitter Live. I mean, again, he gets more airtime than I get. But great job. Tell the folks about the show. And, of course, still continuing with CrescentCitySports.com.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we're 6 weeks in with Hard in the Paint, and it just keeps getting better. We try to bring in as many varied voices as we can get from all over, not just locally, but nationally. We try to go to talk to the teams that are coming into New Orleans and facing ours. And it's just, I try to have fun. And it's been great. I learned a lot from these guys in particular. I mean, these have been my mentors for we're going on 6 years now. That's how long our relationship has been. So working with them, continuing to write, covering LSU, covering the Pelicans for Crescent City Sports, covering high school football, and being a part of the Friday night coverage. I love that. You get to go. And that's where it all started for most of us.
Yes.
Covering the neighborhoods, covering those local games. So it's great to be a part of that. And really, this is the part of the season. It's like Christmas because I'm so close to basketball and I'm in the midst of football. So I'm very excited for what's coming up.
And let me add that at Crescent City Sports, we value and we've come up the hard way to make a local website happen. And it's people like David, you mentioned Les East, Roe Brown still involved, Ken Trahan and I, that we value honesty and a true passion for everything in local sports. So it's a labor of love, and David Grubb is part of the reason why we're so successful.
Well, I don't know about you, Dave. We have to have a room or something with a cot and someplace for you to stay, because once basketball season starts, I don't know where you're going to find the time.
No, I'm going to probably take up residence just outside of the Smoothie King Center and hang out there and do my show, maybe live from the parking lot each day.
Well, people don't realize, again, you're there at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You don't leave till like 11:30, 12 o'clock. I mean, it's a long day when you're covering the NBA. It's a long day. And then, by the way, his show starts at 8 a.m. the next morning. So, it's a long day.
And more primetime games for the Pelicans.
That's right.
This year than any other year. So,
so very long nights for David Grubb. Guys, before we get started, don't we jump right into the pros? But, again, we're in really the most fun time of high school football, non-district, where, again, coaches get to match themselves up against other teams that maybe they don't play in district, trying to gauge themselves. I think Rummel went to North Carolina, right? To be able to play in North Carolina. Some games of interest this week that people want to maybe check out.
We have some really good games just locally. One around the state that folks are going to be interested in is University Lab, who came down on CrescentCitySports.com and beat a very good John Eric team. Now they're going to Neville, another powerhouse, in a really intriguing matchup. But locally, we talk about the games. Folks want to see Arch Manning. They're going up against a 5A school. That's going to be intriguing. Rummel comes home after beating Charlotte Catholic, I should say, a multi-time state champion. A defensive struggle there. Now Rummel will have to deal with a potent offense at Slidell. So a nice matchup you don't normally get to see. They're going to do that. De La Salle at Country Day, the early afternoon game on Friday. De La Salle, very good again this year. Almost held on to beat a loaded Warren Easton team. And Justin Ibieta, I believe he's the best quarterback on the high school level right now in the state. Although we'll keep an eye on that Arch Manning. And I know TJ Finley's an LSU commitment, but Ibieta, the Tulane commitment's really good. Really good challenge against what Ryan Manali does every year at De La Salle. That's just a couple of great matchups. And what's a loaded week, too. We had Carr taking on Curtis in a 3-point shootout last week. We're so blessed to have so many great high school football programs, and that gives us great games.
Dave?
Yeah, and then, Carr and McDonough 35 tonight. We'll be getting it on over at Gormley. And then you look at Carver, who went on the road and beat St. Amant in the pit, which is never an easy place to win. They come back and they play a very difficult Brother Martin team tomorrow. So those are another one of those games where, for Carver especially, a team that won its district last year, 7-4, was runner-up to, won its district last year, and they have a tough district with Warren Easton in there. These are the kinds of wins they have to get. And so to come back with that offense, with Curry, with Elface Jr., this is a great opportunity for them to prove that they're more than just their offense, but they're going to need their offense in that game.
I'll tell you what, this is the best time of the year, again, which gives you those non-district matchups that, again, some are dream matchups, okay, that you never really see. And, of course, hopefully they'll get it together and we'll have one championship for each division. Maybe we could do that down the line. That'll be another show. Guys, let's start off. Saints 1-0, 30-28 winners over the Texans. Look, I've been talking about this all week on the radio show. This week one is a mirage because of the way things are set up now in the NFL, with veterans really not participating in preseason games, the lack of hitting, the no more two-a-days. So teams are trying to shake the rust off in a lot of cases, especially those that are going to play a lot of plays in the NFL in week 1 and week 2. So again, teams that may look great in week 1, by the midseason, you might say, "Whoa, what happened to that team?" Well, I mean, again, it is what it is in today's NFL. Some people say that I kind of overreacted this week. I don't think I did. First of all, again, I thought the offense was terrific, okay? And Breeze obviously did a great job. I think right now the issue is on the defensive side of the ball. And I'd like to start there first because, we can throw out the superlatives about Breeze and how outstanding the offensive line was and of course, the skill position players, how well they played. And we'll get to that in a moment. But I'm concerned about this defense, and I'm concerned about a couple things. First of all, the ability to stop the run. We know Onyemata comes back this week. Hopefully that helps. The ability to get a pass rush with 4 down linemen, which they got 6 sacks and 11 quarterback hits last week. But again, they didn't do it with again, only rushing 4. And then, of course, the defensive backfield got torched, okay? And linebackers out of position. Demario Davis has been maybe one of the best players on that defense since he came over from the Jets. Even he had a below-par game based on what he's done here in New Orleans. Now, again, a mirage, guys trying to get themselves into game shape in some cases, but still, for me, a little bit of concern on the defense. I'd like to get you guys' take on that. Am I overreacting, or is it something that we really have to keep an eye on as they really you want to talk about Houston, their offense. Wow, you're going to Los Angeles now, and you're taking on the Rams.
Look, we can't gloss over that part about what Week 1 tells us and oftentimes doesn't tell us enough, because we have track records with these veteran coaches with teams, and how they handle the preseason does equate early on in the season. There are coaches like John Harbaugh with the Ravens and Mike Zimmer with the Vikings. Their track record, they play starters deeper into preseason games, and they tend to start the season well, and we saw that this past week with dominating victories. The Vikings win over Atlanta was extremely impressive. We wonder about Atlanta and the questions about them, even though they played Matt Ryan heavily in the preseason, and their offensive line wasn't good then, and it wasn't good at many. So that's good news for the Saints. I think you can read a little bit into that, and they have to win at home against Philly and not fall behind to 0-2, no matter what happens with the Saints, because they have an early schedule that's difficult as well. But like you mentioned, we have to ask questions about the defense. You have to be thrilled that the offense came out of its usual early season slumber. This is a team that hadn't won a Week 1 since 2013. So that's a major hump to overcome. And we saw maybe a great quarterback, if he can stay healthy, and Deshaun Watson play great football and challenge that defense. So the defense is missing 2 key defensive tackles. You talk about the run defense as well as the push up the middle, so you don't have to blitz. You didn't have Onyemata because of the suspension. When are we going to see Sheldon Rankins? And you've got tough games ahead, starting with the Rams. So you are concerned about that. But what you love to see was the fact that Trey Hendrickson looks like he's now ready to be a player and to bring speed rush off the edge that you were worried this team didn't have, because as good as Cam Jordan is, no matter where you put him, they really needed somebody at the right end to be able to come off and make things happen, and to be able to come up with a couple sacks and impress at times against Laramie Tunsil, who's one of the better left tackles in the league. That's a big, big deal. So there are some positives there. But hey, Dennis Allen, we've got to question him. We've got to wonder what he's thinking in the final minute of the game. A team should not be able to score a touchdown when you're protecting a 6-point lead. 75 yards, 2 plays, that's unacceptable. One thing, you're not cheating your safety. You're not playing deep to make sure that DeAndre Hopkins may be the best receiver in football, although Mike Thomas has an argument there. He gets behind your defense. That can never happen. And then you come back and maybe overreact the emotions of the game and go what looked like cover 0, leave the middle of the field vacant. Hey, you got that 11th and final hit on Watson, but he also had the opportunity to go down the field and beat you again. That can't happen, and I'm sure there were recriminations going on in the coaching rooms to deal with that. But you do like the fact that you're going to get reinforcements up front. You know that this linebacking core can play better and can be elite against the run. They were second in the league against the run last year, and you just expect this team to get better. But they're going to have to play better over 60 minutes to escape LA with the win. Bright side, Sean McVay, the Rams, another team that starts slowly. They got away with it at Carolina, that I don't think is very good. I think the division is there for the Saints to take, and that's maybe the least of their worries. But the Rams can be had early in the season. Jared Goff hesitation with his decision making, even though he has great receivers, you might have an opportunity to make a play or two defensively in what could easily be a shootout. But we'll get to that more. It stands out to me, though. Two slow starting teams survived week 1 and go into this mammoth rematch.
Dave, should I pull the reins back here, or again, is there reason for concern?
I have some concerns about the defense. I do think that even with Anyamata coming back, and he's much more of a pass rusher in that role rather than a defensive stopper at the run, at the point of attack for the run. I don't know how much he helps there. I still think the rotation was not great against Houston. You had two backs who had barely gotten into the playbook, and they both averaged over 7 yards a carry. They were able to bounce outside with regularity.
Yes.
When the holes weren't there inside, they were getting to the edge. So that's something that shows about discipline. The Saints need to stay disciplined in their assignments and contain those outside runners. With the Rams, Todd Gurley looked better than I thought he would look in week 1. After the way he ended last season, I was really concerned about him. But he looked relatively fresh, and he had some bounce in his legs. So while he's still early in the season, this is going to be a test for the Saints. The nickel corner position has been an issue since training camp.
That's true.
They have not solved that yet. Eli Apple is still a guy who, for every good play that he makes, there are a couple that just make you wonder where he is. And outside of Marshawn Lattimore in that first game, no one in the secondary really stood out as having a quality game. So when you give up the kind of physicality that they were susceptible to in the first half, where Houston was able to go on long, extended drives, that's a bit of a problem in my mind. It does come down a lot to Dennis Allen because the talent is not going to get much better than what you have.
What can you do at this point?
So, but we've seen this defense has had these roller coasters over his tenure. He's got to stabilize this because, like I said, these 3 games here, if you don't finish out 2-1 at least here, or you don't want to be in a position where you're 1-2 over these next 3, and the defense is going to be a big part of whether or not that happens.
I want to touch on something that Jude touched on because it's become epidemic. The inability to close out games. I mean, this is happening over and over again, where you got to hope that Breeze can take you down the field once again and win the game. Dave, I think it's an issue. It's been an issue for a while. It's been kind of simmering under the surface. But again, it reared its ugly head once again against Houston. You go back to again the Rams game from last year. We keep going back. This is happening too much for a team that has as many quality players on the defense that they do.
I think that the Saints didn't help themselves by the way that they started the game offensively. To go 23 pass attempts and 6 rushes in the first half was a huge mistake, and I think it put the defense in some bad positions, especially when you're trying to get a rhythm going. You don't want to be sitting on the and watching your offense do these 3 and outs and not really having any sustained success. So I think that didn't help, and then to have to come back late. Part of that became once they discovered that they could get more balance. They were a much better team. And that helped on both sides of the football because when you're scoring, now you allow your pass rush to do its job. You're putting more pressure on the other team. They have to adjust, and they've had, when Houston had to score points, there were occasions where they did not in the second half, where you didn't see that in the first. So I think the Saints need to maintain that balance, especially for a quarterback like Drew Brees at the age of 40. We know the number in his previous 18 games, 40 more pass attempts. He had been 6-12.
Yes.
Tom Brady in that same time span doing the same thing, 12-6. The Saints are not built to win games when Drew Brees throws more than 40 passes. So getting Alvin Kamara those touches on the ground, getting more trust in Latavius Murray going forward is going to be very important to their success.
Right. Talk a little bit about not closing out games.
Not closing out games being part of what you mentioned, how the game goes over the course of 60 minutes. When we get to LSU, we'll talk about sometimes when you're scoring quickly, your defense is on the field, and if it can't get off the field a few times on third down, they wear down. We saw a little bit of that for the Saints. Again, short-handed up front with the guys they wanted to use. They didn't want to have Stallworth and the rookie Tuttle have that many snaps.
Agreed.
But again, you have to do that when you're in that situation. They'll get better there. But there's no question that when you look at the Rams matchup, this is a defense that's going to have to do much better against the run. And like David mentioned, the containment on the edge was questionable no matter what alignment that they used. Yeah, and I think they're a little bit surprised, the Saints were. They didn't expect the Texans to come out with the only experienced back who had been there all in training camp. Duke Johnson is a third down back. They add Carlos Hyde, who's had success at times, but he's just new in the building. But the Texans realize, are we going to win on the road in a tough environment in prime time against the championship contender? We've got to run the football. football, and I think they surprised the Saints a little bit and got them on their heels. The second half was different, and if we're not talking about that two-play 75-yard disaster, they had held the Texans to 7 points in the second half and showed some more of their capabilities. So again, Todd Gurley does look better. They're going to use Malcolm Brown, who had 2 touchdowns as well at running back. Darrell Henderson, the rookie, will mix in as well. They have to keep Gurley fresh, but no matter who the running back is, if they can take away the run and make Jared Goff, the early season version, beat them, they've got a chance to be 2-0 here. And I saw some weaknesses in Seattle as well. Their defense is not the Legion of Boom level defense. Right. The Saints can get through this 4-game stretch with a winning record if they can somehow find a way, starting with a Rams team that's probably easier to play now on the road than later in the season.
Dave, offensively, this team goes, you would say, as Breeze goes, but this team really goes as the offensive line goes. And the offensive line was hurt at the end of last year, and that was one of the parts, in my opinion, of the decline of the offense. Again, great start for the offensive line. Wolford graded out as the #1 lineman on Pro Football Focus. Ramczyk shuts out J.J. Watt. Are you kidding me? McCoy held his own. I mean, when I went back and looked at the game and looked at it play by play and keying in, there were only a couple plays. There was one where J.J. Watt kind of threw him around like a rag doll. Other than that, he was solid against that front. Pete, only 2 miscues that I could see, and of course Armstead, I thought he played well. He gave up 1 sack. Only thing I could say for Armstead, like I said on the radio show, was a lot like Anthony Davis. Every time Davis would hit the floor at the Smoothie King Center, everybody would kind of gasp for breath. Same thing when Armstead hits the ground. I'm like, get up, please get up, make sure you're up. But I think you made a great point about running the football. Kamara's getting a lot of touches, and they were in a situation where they didn't really utilize Murray as well as they should have. He's a different back than Mark Ingram is, and they're going to have to utilize him different. You know, you get that one cut, you get an opening. He has the speed to take it to the house, like we saw with that 31-yard touchdown run. If you look at the speed they have in that backfield now with Kamara and Murray, they got I think one of the fastest backfields in the NFL. But they're going to have to, again, be disciplined enough to run the football.
Absolutely. When you look at Murray, just the physical attributes that he has. I mean, Mark Ingram, as talented as he was kind of a bowling ball.
Yes.
You know, 5'9", stocky. Murray is a beast physically, and you saw that, like you said, on that 30-yard touchdown run, it took him one hit go, and that's the kind of play that you need for this offensive line. They are a quick attack group. They do very well when they explode out into the running game early on, and I think that's what they enjoy. Offensive lines want to move forward. Pass blocking is much more about retreating and holding your ground. Linemen want to go forward and push. And I think especially for the Saints, establishing the run early sets up everything. We saw only 1 pass attempt over 20 yards, and that didn't come until they really needed it. Well, you may be able to get more of those opportunities early on when you line Kamara out in the slot. When you get these young receivers who still are, you could see, did not make giant contributions in week 1. You want to see those guys. More plays to Jared Cook, 2 great catches. That's all dependent on how good the running game is. And I think a guy like Ryan Ramczyk, he's on his way to earning a lot of money for himself, and because I don't see him playing right tackle much longer. At his talent, you're going to eventually have to move him over to the left,
I agree with that.
And he's going to be a stud.
Yep, I agree. Let's talk. I want you to touch on the running game, but I'd like to kind of morph into the receivers as well. As David said, the young receivers didn't really show a lot. Traquan Smith got a chance to be able to get on the field. He's always going to get a chance to get on the field because he blocks so well. But I was so impressed with Ted Ginn. Again, 7 catches, 7 targets, 101 yards, 2 clutch catches down the stretch. But his ability, he has not lost any speed. And cornerbacks, defensive backs have to be able to respect his speed. And you see him on either a possible go route or again, maybe a dig route where you saw it down the stretch where, hey, he can go 10 yards and he can stop. And I'm going to tell you right now, the defensive back has to be able to give him some space. He did that. That is like taking candy from a baby every single game, especially now with so much attention that's going to be paid to Thomas and Kamara. That also helps Cook as well. All of a sudden now they've got 4 weapons that they can utilize in the passing game, and hopefully one of these other receivers will emerge.
Is there any doubt that Ginn's a fountain of youth guy? It's amazing that he still has this elite level speed that defenses fear. And what you talked about, his ability, short and intermediate routes, the comeback routes, the deep outs. If he catches the football, that's all you need. And he was huge for 60 minutes when he had his opportunities, or you don't win that game. And Traquan Smith did do his role, a la maybe what a Robert Meacham did, a blocker who can also make things happen physically down the field, more so maybe even than with his speed. So the Saints are only going to put 3 receivers on the field at a time. They want that tight end out there, or maybe more, because Taysom Hill's going to do more than just take snaps. He's going to play in the slot, quasi tight end, and they trust Josh Hill. Yeah, he blocked a lot, did a fine job. Josh Hill, that's what he does best. And of course, Jared Cook's going to get more and more involved. So if those top 3 receivers stay healthy, because you know Mike Thomas is one of the very best to play the game, you've got a trio that if they play like that, the Saints offense is going to be very successful. But like we talked about, they didn't run the ball enough in the first half. I know they don't want to take Alvin Kamara off the field. He is the most dangerous Saint. No offense to Thomas, but that's the guy defense's scheme to deal with first and foremost. But Murray does have the ability to take advantage of what that offensive line can do. Larry Warford wasn't healthy last year. So now he's grading out against a good defensive front like he did in week 1. If he stays healthy next to Ramczyk, you're going to have a power running team on the right side. And you know you have the great athleticism on the other side. McCoy off to a great start in the middle. So those guys stay healthy, you're going to be able to do what you want to scheme against people. And if you talk about the defenses coming up and where their strengths are, speed rushers that attack, that shoot gaps up front, starting with a guy like Aaron Donald, and clearly Dante Fowler's made a difference since coming over in the trade last year from the Jags. I think he had 2 sacks last week against Carolina. They're coming up the field. They're going to look to attack Breeze and to try to turn the Saints over. How can you combat that? You run the rock.
Yeah. No doubt. Guys, I want to go to break in about a minute, but I want to go tip of the cap to Thomas Morstead and Will Lutz. Morstead is just a weapon. A coffin corner kick to the 3-yard line, pooch kick on the kickoff. Again, Lutz just nails 58-yard field goal to win the game. But even the special teams, look, I want fans to realize that there are a lot of new faces on this special teams in terms of coverage. Now, again, Gardner Johnson got the running into the kicker, which was called roughing the kicker, which was a little bit out there, But the other part of it was Harris, catching the ball and running on a fair catch, but and then fielding the ball within the 5-yard line. But those can be cleaned up. But the special teams look like they're going to be pretty good again this year.
Yeah, I think they're going to have they're always elite at that category, and they will be again this year. Like I said, a lot of those things. First game jitters for a young man, returning kicks in a crazy environment on a Monday night. That stuff happens. But as long as you're not dropping the ball and nobody put it on the carpet, the tackling was good. They didn't give up any big returns. They didn't, so I think that the Saints will be fine there. And then you've got probably the best tandem of specialists in the league at punter and kicker.
I agree.
And avoiding flags, which were an issue last year, which is why 3 coaches lost their jobs despite the other strengths in the special teams unit. You saw that again, even from a starter like Von Bell had a couple of miscues early in the game that hurt with field position. I know they want to see better there, but like you guys mentioned, I'm not worried about Harris. This is a guy who went from below Division I. I don't care how well you did in preseason. Right. Now you're on Monday Night Football, your regular season debut. He had the jitters. It was obvious. He'll grow from this, and it helps that they won the football game. Sure. Just like Gardner Johnson can get over what feels like a terrible mistake. Unfortunately, it's one of those plays that wish you could have officiating reviewed so flags like that don't come, and flops are called, and guys are penalized for that, the kickers that do it. But anyway, he was trying to make a play in a crucial situation. I think those guys will be better for it, get those big mistakes out of the way in the W early in the season, and then grow from there, because they're 2 very key players that are going to have to come up big this season if the Saints team is going to get where they need to go.
Couldn't agree with you more. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com, 106.1 Nash FM, and also David Grubb of Sports 1280 at CrescentCitySports.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll come back. We'll break down the Rams and Saints. Then we'll go to the LSU Tigers and the Tulane Green Wave. Don't go anywhere.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. David Grubb, Jude Young, our guests tonight. Guys, let's talk a little about the Rams. First of all, it happened last week before the game. The ESPN, for almost 2 hours, all you heard was revenge and the no call, and of course, it was drawn out through the game. Of course, now you'll get this throughout the broadcast on this weekend, throughout the game, because you're playing the Rams. I think that, you know, I don't know how many people in New Orleans have gotten over it. I think a lot of people have compartmentalized it at this point. I don't think it affects the players at this point. I will say this. This is as close to a division game as you're going to get based off what? These teams playing 5 times since 2016. Within division games, you know your opponent. You know the guy across from you. You know the tendencies. You played against them enough. You know what their go-to moves is, what they're going to do. And of course, then they get a little bit chippy in division games as well, because you're competing against the same team, you know, at least twice a year and then every year. I think it's going to be the same type of atmosphere this week in Los Angeles for the Rams game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, familiarity breeds contempt. Well, the contempt has to be overflowing in this rivalry at this point, like it was at times when they were division rivals in the old NFC West. Look, Sean McVay and Sean Payton, they're always going at it to see who can outdo who as far as offensive gurus go. And the importance of this game, even early in the season, it could be a major tiebreaker like it was in the regular season in the Dome last year. So they know it. But these teams now know each other pretty well. Even though they do, and I think the Rams benefited from that far more last year in the postseason. Look, it's going to be a tough situation for both teams to get stops if they don't come up with big plays, if they're not able to turn you over and win the field position battle. And it's going to be really tough for the Saints if Jared Goff doesn't show more of the rust we saw against Carolina, because Brandon Cooks has thrived against the Saints in matchups. I think since being traded, he's averaged over 100 yards against them receiving for 2 different teams. And they have Cooper Kupp back, who was huge in the regular season matchup, didn't have him in the postseason, and they won anyway. And Robert Woods is all reliable there. So they've got those 3. They've got multiple tight ends. They clearly, when they have Todd Gurley on the field, that makes them even more dangerous. So the Saints are going to have to come up with key stops when they get the opportunity, the opportune penalty that works in their favor. If they do come up with a negative play behind the line of scrimmage, can they get off the field? Because that's going to be key. We know Drew Brees hasn't been as good on the road, even in ideal road environments like LA will be. Team's not quite the same on grass. So that challenge is there. But I do remember a couple of years ago as a rookie, when the rest of the offense was struggling, Alvin Kamara was huge in that game, and he's going to have to come up big this time around. He's going to be a difference maker as a playmaker, and it again is going to be fun to see Mike Thomas match up with either Marcus Peters or Aqib Talib. That's the kind of matchup that fans watch football to see, and that's going to be a key, because we know third down, medium and long, Mike Thomas is a guy who's going to see the football in those crucial situations. If he wins enough of those battles, the Saints have a chance to score enough and win.
Break down the Rams and Saints.
You know, I think it's funny when you talk about the memories of fans versus the memories of players, because none of these players were there for John Robinson and Mike Lansford breaking hearts in the 80s. I mean, I lived those.
Yes.
They weren't there for the greatest show on turf.
30 years since Flipper Anderson. Just wanted to bring that up.
So killing.
But then also, again, that ebullience of beating the Rams for the first playoff win in franchise history. All those things live with the fans.
Right.
And so, yeah, like you said, there is that same semblance of a rivalry that's always going on. And even with this matchup, Brees and Goff 2-2 against each other. So there's enough tension there competitively for you to chew on more than this no call. It's time to retire that. We need to let it go. That's last season.
Bury it.
And I mean, even the players like Aqib Talib, he says, if anybody's hanging on to it, that's their problem at this point.
Right.
The players have moved on. They've got new goals. There's no.
But I think it's a network problem, right? I think it's a media problem more than a fan problem.
And it's like, what even is there to talk about at this point? We can't go and replay this. The anger with refs is going to exist between teams and fans forever. Yeah. There's no team that feels they get a great shot from the refs.
Look, only the players and coaches matter, though. And when it comes down to it, the Saints are the ones who are going to have a little bit more fire, the revenge factor. The players have to play within themselves, execute the game plan, and not make early mistakes because they're out to prove a point. It's about executing over 60 minutes. That's what the great teams do. And if you're going to win on the road against another great NFL team, you have to do that. So you do worry a little bit about that, how fired up the Saints will be. They're a pretty veteran team, though, and the youngest guys we talked about earlier weren't there for it. Right. So you should expect a professional effort. That's what the Saints need to do. It's not about emotion. It's about executing and out-executing the other guy.
The goal is to win the game, not to come back with a 55-20 win.
Right.
You don't need that. Just get out of there. Right. If it's 1 point or however many, your job is to go there and win and play effectively.
Gurley and Brown, again, much better than what they saw against Houston last week. McCoy will be tested with Aaron Donald in the middle. And then you look at the weapons that they have, and Jude went through all those weapons they have in the receiving corps versus the Saints secondary. I mean, it is going to be a challenge.
It's going to be about tackling. Are the Saints going to get guys early? Because Cooks can run after the catch. Kupp can run after the catch. Woods can get deep, and he can run after the catch. They're all relatively outside of Cooks. Both Kupp and Woods are bigger receivers. So, again, you're not dealing with small guys. You're dealing with physical guys who can be physical, who can work in different positions across the field. You can put all of them on the outside. You can line all of them up on inside. So they're very flexible there. Gurley can also catch out of the backfield. And again, like you said, Sean Payton, Sean McVay, they will give you every look that they can possibly think of because nothing is out of bounds. So, yeah, the Saints have to be prepared for everything. They're going to have to make tackles very quickly, get people down on the ground, and not allow players to get to the second level.
Good news is this offense can match them score for score.
Sure, and they may have to because Cooks is their Ted Ginn. He stretches the field, but he's younger and better. And Cooper Kupp's a matchup nightmare for the Saints because we talked about how they're struggling in the slot. It's a shame Patrick Robinson couldn't come back and play well in the preseason to be trusted to fill that role they signed him to fill because P.J. Williams is still going to be hit and miss, but he's the best they've got right now, and I don't know how many of those battles he's going to win if the Saints don't get enough pressure. So, yeah, it's about the offense being able to put drives together, and what we talked about, not going too much to the passing game early. If you have balance and can run the ball and win time of possession, it's more important, I think, for the Saints to win in that category here than it is for the Rams because you're playing at their place. They probably have more overall weapons than you do, as good as the Saints offense is, and honestly, they have a better pass rush available going into this game, even if the Saints play their best and Onyemata becomes a factor. So Saints need to have balance. It's hard to see them winning without a big advantage in the turnover battle if the Saints don't have balance in a running game that's there for 4 quarters. If they try to sling it around the yard in the first half like they did against the Texans, they could fall behind and never come back.
We'll get you guys picks before we get out of here today. Let's switch to LSU. 45-38 winners over Texas. They moved up to 4th in the AP poll, 5th in the Coaches Bowl. I was apprehensive, cautiously optimistic last week after Georgia Southern. Was waiting to see what they did at Texas. I'm a believer in this offense. Again, with 3 100-yard wide receivers, what Burrow's been able to do. Again, this bodes very, very well for the Tigers. But unexpectedly, the defense really not playing up to what the LSU defenses are expected to play. A lot of people felt, myself included, this was going to be a really good defense. With the offense scoring as much as they are, they're going to have to go too deep on every level of the defense. The Saints have had that problem in their past and even in the present. Scoring quickly, getting back to defense. Has to get back on the field quickly. I think it took its toll against Texas. And now when you start getting into that secondary, you're talking about a very young, untested secondary with a lot of freshmen, and a lot of guys are going to have to step up in the first and second levels of that defense. Dave, your thoughts on the Tigers versus Texas and the Tigers offense as well?
I was surprised at how poorly the safeties played for LSU against Texas. That was supposed to be the strength of strengths with Delpit coming back and leading that group. Stingley played very well for a freshman against Texas, but the rest of the secondary, again, there wasn't sufficient pass rush for Texas. They were able to get hits, but that's because Ellinger is a mobile quarterback, and he holds onto the ball looking for some plays, but it wasn't a consistent rush. Texas was able to run the ball better than I thought they would be capable of doing, especially after they held Georgia Southern to 98 yards, a team that all they do is run, and they were much more disciplined. I just felt that the Tigers, the identity now has switched too far to the other side. I want to see those players who have been brought in, especially on the defensive line. When was the last time LSU produced an NFL caliber defensive lineman who was a disruptor? It's been a while, and they're still not doing it. You're not seeing that penetration up the middle. You're not seeing the edge collapsing on the opposing quarterback. And that's the difference in the SEC. The SEC is defined by defensive lines.
Yes.
Great defensive lines win championships, and this LSU defensive line is not a great one. It has the potential to be very good. The linebackers have the potential to be great. The secondary has the potential to be great, but I'm not sure about this defensive line.
Your thoughts?
And it's a defensive line in transition. I think Rashard Lawrence has the potential to be great and a really good to great NFL player, but I don't think he's ever going to stay healthy. Everything I hear says that he has a knee condition that's not going to go away, and he wasn't able to play a full 60 minutes because of that. This past week, you look at the change that Dave Aranda is trying to put into the attack mode for the defensive linemen, try to shoot gaps, try to make plays in the backfield. That will come with issues against a mobile quarterback where he's able to buy more time and hurt you down the field. And when we talked about the secondary, you talk about the cornerbacks in particular. The true freshman Stingley played great. Christian Fulton looked a little banged up, and he wasn't so good winning those one-on-one battles. And they don't seem to have any depth behind those guys. So more and more teams, if they can't run the ball against the Tigers, are going to put 3 and 4 wide receivers on the field and see if they can find some matchups, because LSU might not be able to handle it. I think Grant Delpit will have better days. I think Jacoby Stevens is continuing to be a factor. They have to be great safeties against the best teams this team plays. But just like with the Saints, they survived week 1. LSU survived this huge test on the road. Of course, the no AC in the locker room, and we saw a team start cramping up in the third quarter, even though LSU tried not to say that much about it affecting them. It clearly did, and then they couldn't get off the field. Because the funny thing is, they got more pressure in the second half and created second and third and long to favor the defense, and they still couldn't get off the field.
Right.
But the bright side is they survived this test. Texas has one of the best passing offenses in the country, period. Sam Ellinger's the truth. Look at the rest of the schedule. At Mississippi State, a healthy Tommy Stevens, the way Joe Moorhead runs his offense, that will be a challenge for the defense. They will play up tempo. They will spread the field. Of course, in Tuscaloosa. No doubt about that. The rest of the schedule, find me offenses that LSU's defense needs to fear. If this passing game keeps going like this, and they should, they're going to overwhelm pretty much every other team on the schedule, especially getting the good defenses that Auburn and Florida have coming to Tiger Stadium. Look, I said at the beginning of the season I thought 11-1, and I feel really good about that now, because I did believe that the Joe Burrow story was going to be a great one, and he's a true Heisman candidate right now.
I think the next 3 weeks are proving grounds for a lot of the young players on this team. I think you need to see some of those backup players in the secondary, those freshmen, that again was some of the reasons why we saw Joseph and Netherly transfer to the University of Kentucky. Those guys have to prove they can play in the SEC. You'll be able to do that over the next 3 weeks. I think running back is another position. Look, I want everybody to picture what the Saints do with a dynamic running back like Kamara in the backfield. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a nice back. Leonard Fournette is a nice back. But again, they've got to have a dynamic back. I understand why they played Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because again, his ability to block. He is a veteran catching the football. He ran hard. He had 89 yards. But if they could just get that dynamic back, and I want to see what Davis Price and also what John Emery has to bring to the table. So the next 3 weeks is about seeing what type of depth do you have.
That was my biggest thought, is that they should be spending more time on establishing who are going to be your primary running backs than fine-tuning the passing game. You can keep throwing the ball, but it's going to be easy to throw the ball against these upcoming opponents. You're not playing, when you play Northwestern State, you're not going up against a team that's going to be able to compete with you on the outside. So now let's get those blocking assignments down. Let's see if this offensive line can start coming together, because all these guys haven't played together throughout the fall camp. So let's get that continuity there. Let's get these guys more than 5 carries in a game and really start to see if you can establish rhythm. Because it's not going to be about getting yards. They can get plenty of yards against these teams that they're facing over the next 3 weeks. It's a relatively easy schedule for them.
Yes.
But you've got to get continuity. You've got to get an understanding of the concepts. You've got to decide who are going to be the bell cows for this game, because when you do go to Tuscaloosa, you can't get 35 rushing yards like you did last year and the year before.
Right.
You've got to put up triple digits on the ground, on the road to win in the SEC. And this is the time to figure that out with that running game.
David and I tweeted back and forth a little bit about this running back topic during the game.
Right.
Look, this is the least impressive LSU's top of the depth chart has been at running back since I can remember. We're talking Curly Hallman era.
Right.
I mean, that's a long time. No offense to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Solid player, great as a part of a trio, but he's your number one guy by far right now. Leonard Fournette, no offense, shouldn't be playing at this level. Shouldn't be somebody that you're having to play in this game because it's early in the schedule and your two young freshmen aren't ready to roll. They basically gave one carry to the freshman from Southern Lab, and that's it, and we didn't see Emory. Now you're right. We've got to see these guys play, and we need to see them challenged as pass blockers. We need to see them play assignment football because they're going to need them to win at Alabama. They may be able to win every other game without them, but they're going to need them if they have any chance to be a title contender, to beat an Alabama. You get your shot at the Georgias of the world, the Clemsons of the world. You're going to have balance. I think they understand that, and I can't blame Coach O and the two-headed monster at offensive coordinator. That's a good monster as opposed to a bad one so far, for going with the veterans because they believed, and they were right, that if they didn't make mistakes in pass blocking, that Joe Burrow and those three receivers were going to tear Texas apart. LSU was overconfident going in that game, and they lived up to it. They destroyed the Longhorns, and they're going to do that to a lot of teams moving forward. But like we said, they've still got to figure out if they can get those freshman running backs on the field because they have difference-making talent.
Yeah. And look, I would also say, and look, it is same thing. Work on your tackling. The tackling was horrendous last week. Much like the Saints, the ability to be able to rush the passer with 4, not 5, not 6. That is an issue here with LSU as well right now. And this is the 3-week stretch where you find out, again, who can play and who can't play.
And with this group, because there are so many players who have the opportunity this year to seize big roles, everybody around Joe Burrow has a chance to emerge into their position. Justin Jefferson can become one of the nation's top receivers, and he can do that through these next 3 weeks, continuing to dominate and get that mentality of being a true number one. When you see the Thaddeus Moss, a kid who's had some big catches in each of the first 2 weeks, but still hasn't had a breakout game. That potential is here over the next 3 weeks as you get into that period of time where you're taking on those ranked teams week after week after week. You want to build that confidence, and that's what LSU should be focused on. Distributing the ball, getting it into everybody's hands, because plenty of guys, Miles Brennan, again, be ready to throw.
No doubt.
Get in there. If Miles Brennan isn't seen by the middle of the third quarter Saturday, then we have a problem. You know what I mean? LSU needs to finish this game just like they did week 1, be done by the 12-minute mark of the third quarter, and the rest should be experimenting the rest of the way on with the young guys.
Couldn't agree more. By the way, Northwestern this week at Vandy, and then Utah State comes to LSU. So again, those are the 3 games we're talking about. We'll go to the phone lines, and we'll talk a little Tulane. Tom is in Metairie. Tom, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. How you doing, Tom?
Hey, guys. I wanted to make a comment about LSU and then get your feedback on the Saints. That 3rd and 17 first down will probably go down as one of the best plays in LSU history, I think. And I think if LSU continues to score like they will, the pressure on the other teams will be enormous. So that's a great defensive thing, I guess, to have. But last season, I called about our safety for the Saints, 43 Williams. And this is not the first game of the season. I'm talking about last season. He was out of place late. Here again, he's not the deepest guy and seems to be out of position. No one seems to be talking about him. We're talking about corners all the time. This guy needs to be the deepest player on the field. He got burned twice. Yeah. We'll see what you guys think about that. Thanks.
I thought the interception was great, again, but he turns around and he whiffs on the tackle on Watson at the 2-yard line. That's the Minnesota Miracle all over again. You got to wrap up there. You got to knock that quarterback out of bounds. It's got to be first down, goal to goal from the 2. I agree, out of position. He was really good his rookie year. I don't know what has happened in terms of his maturation process.
Well, I think he was really good for large stretches of the game against the Texans, too, and he graded out well no matter what source you looked at, but it's his mistakes, and especially his those mistakes late that are so infuriating. Look, he can't be blamed for the touchdown to Kenny Stills because he was put out of position by the defensive call.
Yes.
Okay, but the play before that is inexcusable. You know that Hopkins was getting a step in a great battle against Marshawn Lattimore all night. You can't let it happen when you're defending a 6-point lead inside a minute to go, and he was late on the play. That should have been his main responsibility, his main focus. So you wonder a little bit whether there are ghosts in the machine here when it comes to him and what's in his head late in these close games, because otherwise you had to like a lot of his performance, because the one play deep down the field to Will Fuller is one of the better deep threats in the league and got a couple steps on Eli Apple. It's because Watson was able to buy time. But other than that, you didn't hear necessarily a lot from him. It was a lot of Hopkins. He was the main target, and he will be for a very long time for Watson. But, you know, Williams has to be the guy who is the deep center fielder he was drafted to be out of Utah. That was his strength. And I wonder whether the Saints are going to start trying to trust him a little bit more, to play him as a single high safety and say, think conservatively, look to make plays on the deep ball. We need to prevent the big play, especially when we look this week against a guy like Brandon Cooks. He's the guy you can't let get behind her. The other two work over the middle much more, short and intermediate. This is a test. If Brandon Cooks gets behind the defense and Marcus Williams is involved, you have to start questioning what he's thinking, what he's seeing, and what his mindset is as far as being the last line of defense like a free safety center fielder is supposed to be.
Yeah, I think he has internalized some of it. Yeah. You can't help but to. When it's constantly a topic of conversation, I would say probably the same is true for Eli Apple. You know, it's not the things that they do well that we pay attention to at this point. It's when they make these mistakes, and they tend to happen at very inopportune times, because everybody on the field is making a mistake at some point. But these tend to be really magnified situations. And you worry about that with professional athletes, because how do you address it head on and say, hey, we don't give up big plays, let's not do that? Or do you back up off of him and allow him that space to grow into it? He's still a very young player.
No, he is.
But we don't, the Saints are in a window where you can't wait on guys to mature at the same time. They need him to get into that zone immediately, because the window will be closed very quickly.
Well, you've seen Von Bell become a much better safety. You would think that, again, Williams would be doing the same thing. Now, look, that's tough. The Minnesota Miracle is tough to live with. But, I mean, again, I think at this point, he's got to take the next step. You know, we say the same thing about Davenport. At some point, the lights got to go on for you.
More than any position in the league, whether you're a safety or a cornerback, you've got to have a short memory in the NFL. You're going to get beat sometimes, especially with the way the rules are set up. They're set up for offenses to succeed. So that's got to be inside the building. That's got to be a group effort. You're not getting benched, Marcus. You're our number one guy, and there's really no number two as far as who's going to play that free safety role that we need you to play. So shake it off, make plays. If a mistake happens, every single guy on this defense is going to make them. You need to come back the next play and win it.
Yeah, I agree. Let's grab a call, and we'll talk some Tulane. Jack is in River Ridge. Hey, Jack, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Guys, how you doing?
Hey, Jack.
First of all, Jude, I want to congratulate you on getting away from the last radio station you had. I think it'll open up. I'm getting a lot of feedback. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay, I have to turn your TV down.
Well, while he does that, I want to thank you, Jack, for...
My TV's not on.
Okay. All right. We're getting feedback?
Thank you, Jack, for the kind words, but I do want to thank the good people at WGSO Radio for how hard they work to try to help us put out a good product over the years. There's plenty of good people that are still there right now that I consider friends. And I know you feel the same way with your background.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. Your question, Jack.
Yeah, well, I just had an observation.
Okay.
There was a lot of bad line play in the NFL last week. Like, for instance, the Chargers and the Colts gave up almost 350 yards of rushing. So I think the Saints can fix that part of it. I'm more concerned with the defensive backfield, because, honestly, if Houston's offensive line was a little bit better, I'm not sure that the Saints can cover Houston's wide receivers. And then looking forward to the Rams offensive line is a little bit better. I'll just listen to your comments, guys. Thank you.
I don't think a lot of teams are going to have a great deal of success with Deshaun Watson and those wide receivers, because you add Stills, a healthy Will Fuller. Kiki Kute is one of the better slot players in the league, a young guy. Wasn't even active because he's always banged up. But they've got four guys they can mix in there, with Hopkins being unstoppable one-on-one. So let's not overreact to that. The Texans are ready with a healthy Watson, and they believe it because they made big trades in the preseason to try to be a contender. They know that their time is now. So relax again, week one. It's not that bad. I think what he mentioned about running games and some success of certain teams running the football in the league, you have more time to prepare for week one, especially with veteran teams and defenses where the personnel's the same and they have tendencies that you can come up with advantages on offense. And if you can do so in the running game, that improves your chance to win. So that happens probably more in week one than it happens anytime during the year for obvious reasons.
Dave?
The thing I like about this opening stretch for the Saints is that they play very different styles of offense in each game, which should help the defense going down the stretch. Because you start with the Texans, who want to throw the ball down the field with a big guy like Deshaun Watson. Then you go to the Rams, that are going to play this complex and intricate offense where you don't know what each matchup is going to be like. Then you get Seattle, which is going to try to bludgeon you a lot more, play physical with you. And then Dallas is a mix of the two. Going to be very physical with their running game, but also the traditional pro concepts in passing. So I think overall, what we want to do is in football, you're always building towards those last 4 games. So again, if the Saints can make it through here 2-2, 3-1 in this stretch, they will learn enough about their defense and will learn enough about that defense to see if they're truly a contender or not.
Guys, let's go to Tulane, 24-6 losers to Auburn. Nothing to be ashamed of. I'm very bullish on Tulane this year. I will say this. I thought the defense played very well and hung for as long as they could. Offensively, just too many mistakes, too many penalties. That's been the issue really through the season. This is the trap game of all trap games right now, with Missouri State coming in and a quick turnaround taking on Houston next Thursday night. Dave, I'll take you first.
Well, it starts with Justin McMillan.
Right.
You know, he has to play better. 10 for 33 against Auburn. He really just didn't have any concept. He didn't have any tempo. He didn't have any understanding. And that's always been the question with him, consistency from week to week. He looked really good in week 1 against a lesser opponent. You go against Auburn, a much better team. He struggled. The running game wasn't there for him.
True.
That does not help him at all. He needs an effective running game. You go into this game against Missouri State, a team that last year lost its last 4 games, 144 to 14,
it was bad.
Something like that, and then has not won a game against an FBS school. And Willie Fritz undefeated against FBS schools, so everything is aligned for them. But you're absolutely right. But Coach Fritz isn't going to allow that.
Right.
This is a man who's focused on this task, and he will not allow his team to think any further than that. The defense is going to be fine. I don't worry about them at all. But they've got to get back to their roots offensively, dominating the line of scrimmage, creating easy matchups for Justin McMillan. And Jalen McCleskey has to play better.
Yeah, he does. He definitely does. He was much more was expected of him at this point. Your thoughts?
It's not a good Missouri State team, and it's an FCS mediocre football team. I think Tulane will take care of business, look to regain their confidence and tempo on offense, get that short passing game going with the running game, and do what LSU needs to do against Northwestern State. Get a big lead, get the backups in, because it's much more important for the Green Wave having the short turnaround to play a massive game for their conference hopes against Houston. Houston playing Friday night against Washington State, so you get them playing a big opponent even though they have an extra day to prepare. But if Green Wave fans want to know how much of an opening there is in the matchup after getting blown out at Houston late in the season last year, De'Aaron King suffered that huge leg injury against Tulane. He hasn't looked the same early this season. If he doesn't look like the true dual threat he's supposed to be for the Cougars against the Cougars from Washington State, and he doesn't have that explosiveness, there's a real chance for this good Tulane defense, this deep and talented defensive line led by Patrick Johnson. Look, they're legit because they gave Auburn real problems, and they only wore down because Tulane's offense couldn't convert on third down and stay on the field. They're going to have a lot more success, especially in Ullman, against that Houston defense that's still not that good. And Dana Holgorsen being the head coach of Houston now, he's all about slinging the ball around the yard. Tulane could dominate time of possession and have a great shot to win that game.
Guys, about 30 seconds left before we have to close. I'm going to say Northwestern, LSU beats Northwestern, Tulane beats Missouri State, Saints, Rams.
I give it to the Saints by 3.
I think about the same. And what I like best is I don't think Jared Goff is ready to play like he played in the postseason. You catch him early in the season might be the greatest advantage in this game for either team.
David Grubb, CrestlySports.com, Sports 1280, 8 to 10 each and every weekday. And, of course, Jude Young, CrestlySports.com, and now 106.1 The Nash, 7 o'clock every weekday night, plus the Tailgaters on 10 o'clock on Saturdays.
Right.
And, of course, Football Friday every Friday when it comes to your high school. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV. Also, you can catch us on Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 o'clock every Friday night. Make sure you tune in there. Don't forget you can catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2. That is noon to 2 weekdays. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com, also the iHeartRadio app. And, of course, all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can also be seen at ericasher.com as well. Want to also remind everybody about the YouTube channel for our show here. You can catch the show on the YouTube channel. And I want to give special thanks to our guests tonight, David Grubb and also Jude Young. Also to our underwriters who make this show possible. And, of course, to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.